Who is this hellish cult, the Temple of Metamorphosis? What does the entity they follow, hidden behind a doorway within hell itself, ask them to do? How amazing is this art? Very. Let's begin. You join up with them and you will undergo a transformation, mentally, physically and spiritually. After the monastery of Saint Vindictus fell to the Black Grail's contagious doctrines, and the undead converts marched forth to bolster the siege of New Antioch, the Church of the Metamorphosis came scuttling in to wrap the shattered towers and the bomb-broken walls in mud and saliva and claim the monastery for their order. Soon the fanes and hallways echoed with new chants, the buzzing, clicking, clacking, squelching mantras of the insectoid monastics. A portable doorway was brought all the way from their home monasteries in the inverted mountains of hell and erected in the desecrated cathedral, and there the brothers and sisters gather to contemplate the sights that churn eternally in the world beyond. A newly reborn acolyte will wear the tatters of the human skin he'd worn when the maggots of communion reshaped his inner flesh, and a discarded caul from the ascension of the high priest. The caul was worn by as a sign of devotion, as well for its miraculous benefits, and come clicking into the scriptorium, where many of his brother and sister acolytes are penning propaganda to distribute throughout the heretical provinces. At an empty desk, he dips his finger-like mandibles in ink and proceeds to write a screed based on the signs he'd just beheld beyond the doorway. Signs that become symbols on parchment, made from the hides of willing sacrifices, symbols that will worm into the brains of any readers, and there lay the seeds of transformation. In their shrines, dug into the rock below the monastery, sisters of the transcendent Crusade are interrogating a captured general from one of the penitent legions recently swarmed in the trenches outside New Antioch. The man had bitten out his own tongue to thwart their aims, but the sisters have no need for speech. They can't even hear through their translucent calls. They hoist him upside down and carefully, slowly, crack open his skull. They are experts, carefully jotting down the intel about the city's defences. They read from the convolutions of his brain. These sisters also watch over the pupating gods, those who are going to change, I think. Elsewhere in the monastery, the tiny abbot bows before the gigantic Mother Superior and the heaps of eggs she continually excretes from her birthing sacs. All day and all night, he supervises the droning postulants that spend their brief lives fertilizing the eggs by inscribing horrible sigils into their soft shells. The eggs are packaged in great cases and sent to the captured airfields south of the monastery, where they are taken up by possessed pigeons. The birds will drop the eggs all over New Antioch. Maybe 1 in 1,000 of the maggots that burst from them will find a willing host. One is all that's needed. Through that person's eyes, the scryers in their bulging cocoons will search the city for weaknesses. All these activities, however, are just chores the monastics perform for the other orders of hell, in return for their continued solitude. They are not a militant order. They were formed to be scrutineers of the artifact they call the doorway. They are dedicated to studying the beyond, and there is no finer fate than to be hollowed out by the things they see, their souls twisted into incomprehensible shapes no material shell can contain. Some monks, once having transcended their form, spend their days contemplating the doorway, and what further forms it can aspire to. Some pupil seraphim, heralds of transfiguration, creatures of the Church of Metamorphosis, seek apotheosis through the doorway. So you can see from those two examples, it's very much the centre of what they do. The mindless husks of the transcended are enshrined in their monasteries' libraries, where their sanctified chitin is consumed bit by pupil novices to help them continue their metamorphosis. The other orders often mock the Church of the Metamorphosis as navel-gazers and hair-splitters, but their role in the Great War is vital to hell's progress. What others perceive as endless noise and idle chatter is knowledge in flux, Knowledge that, once it's picked apart from its tiniest pieces, orchestrates the entire war. And piece by minuscule piece prepares the world for the day when the doorway opens and apotheosis comes blasting forth to illuminate everything in its absolute absence of sense. 3 more bits of lore I couldn't fit into that short story from the Trench Crusade Patreon and by the creator of Trench himself, Mike Franchina. First, Ostiarii guard the entrances to the various church of the Metamorphosis structures, from brood chambers to meditation naves. They can be found standing silently beside the doors. They are extremely lethal but rarely encountered, as they guard only the most impregnable sites. An element of the change they undergo is a metamorphic vector that's used by the Church of the Metamorphosis in its rites of nothing. And when I say that they undergo, I mean all of them that worship this thing beyond the door. The first phase of the rites is molting. The scalp is peeled from the skull and a hole cut to allow access of the metamorphic vector. This is the first step on the journey to godhood. And finally, there are also those within the temple called Erodul. That's how I'm going to say it. Vessels of the doorway. When the eggs are laid, the metamorphosis has begun. And from the art, I think, they either incubate the eggs or perhaps are some point of transformation along that path themselves. Today I was working on 3 videos, 2 on demons and 1 on the creation of the Taquin, and then I came across these guys and had to make and release a video on them as soon as possible. They are like the Cenobites from Hellraiser crossed with insects and Lovecraft. I just love the idea. Think about what's behind that doorway in hell, through which something compels the followers of the temple to cast off their flesh like the skin of a moth and transform like a chrysalis that's opened and what's inside comes out, and then they do it again. It's like their obsession. And that transformation seems to be ongoing as you get further and further from your original form and take on new ones. They are waiting for the doorway to open and for whatever is behind it to emerge and transform all. That seems to be the apotheosis they're talking about, the transformation that takes place from your original form to a later one and then a later one, etc. It sort of makes sense, whatever it is, the changes it gives to those in the temple is an imprint of itself which twists and changes and ever evolves into new forms. However was there when the angels fell? Could this be something older? Who knows? Sounds pretty cool and intriguing, so perhaps. I imagine it as some constantly evolving god of change, where the purpose is the change itself, and its very substance is always ongoing, like a constant flux of chaos. And perhaps the entire dimension is like that, which is why it can reach out and influence people. These guys are my current favourite faction. I was discussing with a friend over at lunch how they could even make some of these guys into models, as in, how could they? I don't play on the tabletop, but would love some of these for display, especially the Angel of Transcendence, a human linked to some larger extension of himself, but crossed with some demonic limbs, splayed out like an insect. Anyway, what do you think of this lore? What parts of it would you like to see expanded upon? Let me know. If you do homebrew on this, let me know. We'll be interested to hear what you have to say. Let me know in the comments. Anyway, one last thing to say. I just want to do a shout out to that amazing art again. I read manga, and for a large part of my life, American or North American comics is what I would call them. Superhero stuff, Image, that sort of thing. And I really appreciate the art here. It definitely blew me away. I'm really excited to see more of what comes in the future. And on that last note, I'll wrap up today's video.